Ladies and gentlemen, Sky News Australia proudly presents Barry Humphries, a tribute.
Hello, Possums. Yes, it's me, Dame Edna, and aren't I looking gorgeous? I am completely off the grog. I am. I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink it all, except for the occasional glass of Chardonnay. I'm talking too much as usual.
No, I mean...
Look at me, am I overdressed? I think I am. I wanted to know, Judy and Sharon, what funeral have you just been at?
Barry Humphries, the legend, the icon, and the greatest entertainer Australia has ever produced.
He was exceptional. He was, as I say, I think the greatest living Australian.
I think Barry is probably our most famous export. He's got this unbelievable mix of talent. Yeah, there's nobody like him, and there'll never be anybody like him.
He was more than just talented, he was quite extraordinary. A man of tremendous gifts as an actor, as a humorist.
The best since Charlie Chaplin, I really believe it. Globally, the best. One of the most incredible performers. He brought Australian humour to the world.
Barry Humphries set the agenda, set the tone, and created a comedic world for so many generations to follow.
For more than 70 years, Humphries and his even more famous alter ego, Dame Edna Everage, have been household names.
I had a phone call from Mr. Hawke. He rang me up. We're very thrilled with a new Gallup poll. 78% of Australians adore me, he said. He did. I said, darling, you only need another 22% to be neck and neck with me, possibly.
Not only here, but around the world.
They've found me a better seat. I've had a little work done, but have you? Not quite as much as some. No, but the thing is, you are still recognisable. That's what you know, some people, you know this as well as I do. You know, they go in. They go in like a Mercedes and they come out like the backside of a Ford Mondeo.
He was brilliant, you know, I keep saying she, because we talk of Dame Edna, straight away you want to talk about she. That's what made him so special, and that's why he's now getting the recognition he deserved. He was able to take her from just, you know, a kitchen sink in Moonee Ponds to sit alongside the King and Queen of England.
I am basically a housewife. I can call you Jane, can't I? I love these little furry shoulders of yours, too. What was that, Jane? Oh, darling, you know the acrylic is a protected animal.
I mean, I've seen him melt the most famous celebrities into just... They almost have to be hospitalised from hilarity because he's nailed them.
I've got a lovely bone structure, haven't I, Benjamin?
Oh, I can see it from here, my lovely.
TV legend Ray Martin interviewed Barry Humphries as Dame Edna many times.
Ray and I covering Fergie's wedding, and we were on the top of the bus, and as the royal cortege, I nearly called it, passed, little Fergie looked up and she saw us. Well, she didn't see you, but she saw.
When you interviewed Dame Edna, you knew you were going to laugh your head off. I mean, she was seriously funny. It's very hard to try and maintain a serious interview, as everybody found, Parky found and Mike Willesee found, and we all found, talking to Dame Edna, or Les Patterson, that you had to laugh.
Good evening. I would like to introduce to you a very close friend of mine, Mrs. Norm Everage, a housewife from 36 Humoresque Street, Moonee Ponds. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Norm Everage.
Excuse I?
Edna Everage made her TV debut in 1956.
And hello everyone, boys and girls, teachers, headmasters, lecturers and students.
She was the dowdy housewife from suburbia, the brainchild of a young Barry Humphries, a university dropout who chose acting over law.
I invented a lot of other characters, all of them male characters. But somehow Edna was more popular, and she began to assume a life of her own. It was, as Edna would say, spooky.
He only invented Dame Edna, of course, for a 2-week run in 1955 and had no idea that she was going to become a global superstar.
So sorry to have kept you waiting. Sit down.
Barry's comedic genius ensured his hilarious and most famous character, Edna, blossomed.
Wake me up when we get to Gay Paris.
No worries, Auntie.
It was the smash hit 70s film The Adventures of Barry Mackenzie that saw her star rise. For acclaimed Aussie filmmaker Bruce Beresford, this was his first feature film with his mate Barry Humphries.
Edna Everage in the second film gets knighted. Who took that decision?
Whitlam. We had a scene where they met at the airport, where he met the Prime Minister, and then Mr. Whitlam said, "What if I make her a dame?" And I said quickly on the spot, "Yes, do it." So he went in, and that was it. And then Barry, of course, capitalised on that for the rest of his career.
Arise, Dame Edna.
Arise, Dame Edna, Gough said at the end of the film. This was a stroke of genius, of course.
Over the next 5 decades, everyone wanted a piece of Dame Edna.
You're not a sex symbol to me, darling. In fact, you actually are a bit of a turn-off. I mean that in a very nice way.
I'm still getting used to this satellite thing, Don. To be chatting away to you and to think that our conversation is being bounced, really, isn't it, off a satellite? Martians could be watching us now. They could be.
If you were one of the Spice Girls, do you think any of them reflect your personality?
I would be spooky Spice.
Dame Edna cannot be underestimated or downplayed in terms of the impact that she had internationally. She was a huge star, possibly one of the biggest stars ever to come out of Australia.
I made a decision, and it's a decision I'd recommend to any woman watching. I put my family last.
With her trademark bejeweled spectacles, bouffant mauve hairdo, and outrageous frocks.
Please welcome Dame Edna Everage.
Humphries had elevated Edna to beyond megastar.
Let me look at you.
Embarking on international tours.
I'm looking at what you're wearing, darling. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. Affordable is the word that springs to mind.
Selling out shows on the West End and Broadway.
Come on, Parsons, tighten up your grip and wave that flag! Wave that flag!
And winning a prestigious Tony Award.
He had 2 big sold-out shows on Broadway, and that for him was something he always looks back at that as kind of the highlight of his career.
He could simply, to use the vernacular, take the piss out of people and out of our cultures, but he did the same for the Brits, and he could be just as wickedly funny in putting a mirror up to the Brits in terms of their society, and he was able, because he was so clever, able to show the Americans as well.
For the first time, leading personalities from the theatre, television, sport, politics and Fleet Street have gathered for an audience with Dame Edna Everage.
She hosted her own TV talk shows.
Liza Minnelli! Joan River!
That was the next chapter, a transformation of the chat show, where he reached audiences of 8 million, and that went on for another decade, 3 different series, and they were extraordinary.
With the who's who of celebrities lining up.
I wouldn't. Oh, I'm sorry, it's hurt.
To face the somewhat likeable Moonee Ponds housewife with the acid tongue.
My favourite Tim Allen film is Galaxy Quest. I only saw Galaxy Quest on a plane. And really, I have to be frank, it was because I couldn't turn it off. I didn't know how to.
Australia is famous for our kind of lethal creatures. You know, we've got the box jellyfish, the funnel web spider, we've got the tiger snake, and then we've got the Dame Edna. I mean, she has the most venomous, poisonous wit.
I think a tie. Do you mind wearing a tie? I think that little Hugh Grant look doesn't really suit a man of your age. I know your secret, I think. While other actresses are busy having reconstruction and surgery, you've let nature take its course.
They came in droves to be skewered and mocked by Edna.
I was starting to go bald, but now I've got a full head of hair. How good's that?
That's not bad. Is there a link between baldness and soaking your head in peroxide? Is there really?
Sometimes I'd think, you know, he'd say, you sit over there and I'm going to put a big name tag on you and just sit there, don't interrupt me. And you'd think this guy's going to hit the roof. They never did.
My mother was tickled pink that I had constructed a character which everyone seemed to think was based on my aunt. But what nobody told my mother was that they thought, although this character of Edna resembled my aunt, she was identical to my mother.
Barry's mother was an influence, Louisa Humphries. She was quite theatrical and quite funny and sharp. She took him to the theatre a lot too. She really encouraged that interest in him.
Edna became so famous, she even introduced the Queen at her Golden Jubilee.
I didn't want to be the climax. I didn't want to be the climax of the show tonight, but that's what's happened. But I think we have some very exciting news now. We do. The Jubilee Girl is here, Possum! What a coincidence that we both arrived at the same time, isn't it?
But Barry Humphries wasn't content with just one globally beloved character. Oh no.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, one and all.
He'd also let loose the offensive, lecherous, uncouth cultural attaché.
Les Patterson! And you should have seen my body. Well, no, there's a young woman down here who has seen my body, if I'm not mistaken. I think it may be my former research assistant, Yvonne Sullivan. Is that you, Yvonne? Oh, darling. Sorry I didn't recognise your face. The top of your head rang a bell.
The vulgarity of Les, I think he got away with it because it was so accurate. People recognised it. It was so raw and funny.
Well, Joan Collins is a personal friend of mine. She's a beautiful girl, too. She likes perfume, too. You wouldn't guess what she puts behind her ears to attract the menfolk. Her ankles. Well, it's 7:15. You with me? You're ahead of me, fella. Is this a dry run or is this going straight to air?
Those little cultural idioms and little cultural things that we don't even notice we've got, he noticed. And that's what made him brilliant. He had us to a T. I mean, had us in the palm of his hand in terms of he put the mirror on us. There are Celeste Pattersons everywhere across Australia, even today, in all the sophisticated 2020s of Australia. We are slobs.
And this little Sheila done a streak in the back seat of the car. I didn't know where to look. And we got to our destination. The driver says that'll be so-and-so, you know. And he says, how are you going to pay me? And she oh, I'm sorry, I can't say it, but she flashed the map of Tasmania, ladies and gentlemen. Now, for those of you who aren't too crash-hot on the geography, Tasmania is a triangular continent. A bit on the bushy side.
Some people were in on the joke, others weren't. If you were a kid, you wouldn't necessarily know the innuendo, but it was still funny.
Humphries would later say Celeste was his favourite alter ego.
My characters are really created in order to provoke. They're not always politically correct, I'm happy to say. And when improvising, I have to make a bit of a split-second decision quite often, and not say what I feel, but what they might feel or how they might express it.
Celeste was just like a warm-up act for Dame Edna. You know, I remember Celeste saying, Dame Edna's coming on now. Let's give her the clap she so richly deserves.
Well, I meet a lot of women in the diplomatic corps, but I gotta admit, not every Sheila bangs like a shithouse door. But I've got a little secretary, all tucked up out of sight. And she's waiting for me to get home from the pub to stick me key in a well-oiled chopper. One thing is certain, I'll be partying and you wave that flag. Oh, come on, possums, tighten up your grip and wave that flag. Wave that flag.
This was Dame Edna at the peak of her fame. Sell-out world tours and smash-hit TV shows. Barry Humphries had transformed the character into a self-proclaimed international gigastar. It was a long way from suburban Melbourne, where he was born in 1934.
Barry Humphries' childhood was privileged and happy. He enjoyed dressing up a lot, performing magic tricks for people who came to the house.
Even when I was at school, I quite liked to startle people. It gave me a feeling of identity. Otherwise, in Australia, you disappear.
He said it just to alleviate the tedium of the football. He would sit on the football field with his back to the game, knitting.
In the 1950s, he left Australia for London to try his luck, landing roles in West End productions, including Oliver and Maggie May.
He'd had a number of jobs in London. He was working at one point in a record factory, smashing records. He did a lot of odd jobs. And he was in a chocolate factory. I mean, it was quite hard to get going, I think.
In the 1960s, Barry Humphries created the hugely popular cartoon strip Barry Mackenzie, about an Ochre Aussie's adventures abroad. But just as Barry Humphries' professional life was taking off, his personal life was in tatters.
He was known all over London at various bars. And he said, you know, he'd be in his car driving and the whiskey bottles would be rattling around in the back of the car. I mean, he really had a serious drinking problem.
He turned up at my house one morning and he'd be hammering on the door, wanting a drink. And I say, Barry, it's only 7:30 in the morning.
His wife at the time, Rosalind Hollenrake, was extremely worried and you know, he was hospitalised a couple of times and she really thought he would kill himself.
When he was in hospital, the AA people visited him. They changed his life. He never touched another drop ever in his entire life.
But the drinking had taken its toll. Barry's second marriage was over. He would go on to have a third failed marriage before meeting his fourth wife, Lizzie Spender. They were together for over 30 years.
Yes, I'm happy about it.
It was the early 70s. Barry had beaten the drink and was now focusing on his work, teaming up with Bruce Beresford to turn his hit comic strip Barry Mackenzie into a movie and then a sequel.
We got a call at the airport from the Film Commission and they said, look, we've got one thing we've got to tell you when you go do this film, Bruce. Don't have any Australian colloquialisms.
No.
And I thought, that's all there is in it.
That's the whole idea.
I said, we'll be making a silent film.
Listen, mate, I need to splash the boots.
train the dragon, siphon the python, bring the rattlesnake, you know, unbutton the mutton, like Point Percy at the Fort.
One of Barry Humphries' most extraordinary legacies is his contribution to our language. He created some of the most amazing expressions. Others he borrowed, but he gave us the most colourful and extraordinary Aussie vernacular, which he took to the world.
You know, pointing Percy at the porcelain and the Technicolor yawn and, you know, busier than a one-armed cab driver with crabs. I mean, all those expressions Barry invented, and they're now sewn into our psyche.
Hello! Huzzah! I'm bad! I'm bad! Come on! You know I'm nice! I'm nice!
Humphries went on to conquer theatre, TV and film on the world's biggest continents, Australia, Europe and the USA. He featured in multiple big-budget movies, including as the voice of Bruce the Shark in Finding Nemo.
Hello.
Well, hi!
Name's Bruce.
His success was unparalleled, receiving the biggest accolades in show business, his services to the arts recognised with the Officer of the Order of Australia and a Commander of the Order of the British Empire.
Barry is a completely anarchic character. I mean, he invented himself, he made himself up from nothing, but he's been taking our cultural temperature with a sort of satirical thermometer for 70-something years.
In recent years, Humphries was the target of cancel culture for calling transgenderism a fashion. His comments led to the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which he founded, to drop his name from a top award.
Which really hurt his feelings and upset him.
That transgender comment that he made was unacceptable today, but it's not one of those things that you ban Barry Humphries over or anybody. You simply disagree.
Oh, look! Here's my new butler!
Thank you. Thank you, darling.
There was an American critic, John Lahr, who said that Barry and Edna took the public to the frontiers of the marvellous.
He went with Australian comedy, Australian idiom and society. He grew with us as we moved along, which is a great art.
I loved it when you parted the Red Sea. Now, a lot of people must have asked you this, but you're looking at my Red Sea now. But you won't be parting that possibly. And I'm on the threshold of my movie career here. I might be a little bit old to go into movies, but I'm going to give it my best shot.
And what movie will this be?
Well, there's some I've been offered. I've been offered the Dead Megastars Society. It's a bit of a...
Per diem, seize the check.
It's a sequel.
His death will be felt by millions around the world. He leaves behind his wife, Lizzie Spender, 4 children, Tessa, Emily, Oscar and Rupert, and 10 grandchildren. While those close to him mourn his loss, his fans can cherish a lifetime of laughter.
Let me look at you. You've aged. You have aged tragically. And yet I'm still the same. It isn't fair, is it, darling?
I was privileged and honoured to call Barry Humphries a friend, and only a few days before he died, spent time with him, visiting him in hospital, where we chatted for an hour. Hilarious stories, lots of gags. As always with Barry Humphries, you just marvelled at his wit and his genius. We're all going to miss Dame Edna and we're all going to miss Sir Les, but above all, we're all going to miss Barry Humphries. I know I will.
It's kind of strange because it feels like we're mourning multiple people's passing here. Les Patterson, Dame Edna and Barry Humphries, they were all characters that were so entrenched and firmly in our DNA as Australians.
I'll miss his friendship and his wonderful sense of humour. That it was so exhilarating being with him, just the way he saw things.
By nature, he was thoughtful. By nature, he was polite. Barry Humphries, as Edna wasn't. and as certainly Les Patterson wasn't. It was almost that alter ego as a chance to be naughty, to be wicked, to be rude.
He's just a really loving and loyal friend as well. So, yeah, he's my favourite person.
And forever the performer, he took to the stage one last time at age 88 for his final show, The Man Behind the Mask. It was Barry as himself, not Edna or Les, but still funnier than ever.
On the opening night on Broadway in 1999, there was a woman in the front row. She was wearing sunglasses at night indoors. So Edna called her Four Eyes, and she was called Four Eyes throughout the evening. She asked Four Eyes to come up, and this was a disastrous decision. The woman leapt to her feet, and only then did I see the white stick standing there, and I thought, what do I do? This is the end of my American career before it's even begun. I thought, I apologized. I should apologize to the audience, and then I thought, the only thing to do is to make it worse. Much worse. The woman was there, and Edna suddenly said, well, at least you didn't bring the dog.
It's difficult to name a bigger star. It's more difficult to think of a world without him. Barry Humphries. Truly one of a kind.
Thank you, boys. Thank you, girls. Thanks a lot. Bye.